I know I lost a lot of you trying to show you how to solve a simple throw formula in order to demonstrate that Trooper Paul's math wasn't adding up. But the discrepancies in his math weren't entirely restricted to how far a 200-pound object might fly in the air given a certain speed and force. But there's also stuff that doesn't add up in his colourful Excel spreadsheets, which clearly are not tech stream data. And I wasn't entirely sure how to explain it to you if solving binomial theorems is over your head. And I could just say, trust me, I'm pretty good with math, but you all know I like to come with receipts. So for this exercise, I decided to use AI. It's extremely good at number crunching and pattern recognition, and maybe not so good at simulating human decision making or feelings. But number crunching is what we need here, as well as pattern analysis, and I'm going to go about it two different ways. I'm going to step you through what inputs I gave the AI, and then the types of questions that I asked it, and then I took all this information and plugged it into Notebook LM and asked it to produce a podcast, explaining what all of this means, and how AI is able to process it all. So let's start with the ChatGPT. The first question I asked was, how much longitudinal G-force would be produced driving a 2021 Lexus 570 at 24 miles per hour in reverse? ChatGPT begins with a kinematic equation, but we don't know what A is, so we need to first solve for A. So it takes the numbers that I gave it, and it tells us that A is approximately equal to 3.04 meters per second squared. It then solves the kinematic equation. The g-force is approximately 0.31 g. But that is acceleration to g-force, so it's not quite answering my question. But it did give me a hint that it could be more accurate if I provided the text stream data. And so I asked it which values from the text stream data would help you to calculate exact values. It gave me some examples and then said I could export it to a CSV and paste that in here and it will help me with that data. And so I converted Trooper Paul's Exhibit 596 to a CSV file and I copied and pasted it into ChatGPT. And then I refined my question, that we're looking for the longitudinal g-force during acceleration and braking. It then identifies 3 key data points: just before braking, when the braking starts, and then the steady speed after braking. It then notes that it's a very small value. When converted to longitudinal g-force during this mild braking event, it is approximately 0.055 g, which is very light braking, and that's not really what Trooper Paul told us. So now I want to get way into the data. So this time I turn Trooper Paul's Exhibit 593 into CSV and paste that into ChatGPT, where it repeats basically the same process and makes some key observations. Namely, where the hard braking or deceleration occurred, where the acceleration peaks were, and where the mild changes were, expressed in longitudinal g-force. Notably, none of the g's that it calculated were enough to harm a healthy adult. When I asked that question, it basically said that you would feel some mild discomfort at 1 or 2 g's, maybe some soft tissue damage around 4 to 6 g's, bone fracture risk at 50 plus g, and fatal blunt trauma between 75 and 150 g's. In fact, Trooper Paul's data tends to indicate that the car was travelling at a coasting or steady speed, hardly enough to cause grievous bodily harm. I then asked, what kind of driving activity would these results indicate? ChatGPT says the sequence suggests a parking manoeuvre, J-turn, or possibly part of a driving dynamics test. It then offers to dive deeper into specific events, to which I say, yes, please do this and tell me if it might be indicative of spinning in the snow. After analysing the data again, it comes to the conclusion that yes, it is highly suggestive of a vehicle losing traction, sliding, spinning, and regaining control, typical on snow or ice. It then gives me a visualization of the data and explains how each point in the graph is consistent with the vehicle spinning or sliding in the snow or on ice. So then I asked, does the data show where no distance was travelled due to spinning on the snow or ice? It answered yes, we can identify potential instances of wheel spin where the vehicle speed shows little to no movement despite throttle input, indicating that tyres might be spinning without traction. It then offers to adjust the criteria or analyse specific moments where the speed and acceleration behaviour seem unusual. I agreed, yes, let's do that, where the speed and acceleration behaviour seems unusual. It makes a number of observations from the data, and it says these events strongly suggest intermittent traction loss and regain, consistent with sliding in snow or on ice. I then ask it to show me the visual comparisons, where it discusses each dot in the graph and what it represents. Again, it says these patterns are strong indicators of vehicle instability on slippery surfaces, like snow or ice. I then ask it to zoom in and analyse the data that Trooper Paul has marked in yellow, where he says the sudden steering change indicates pedestrian vehicle impact. Again, ChatGPT says this sequence strongly suggests the vehicle was stuck or spinning on a slippery surface with intermittent traction loss and regain. I then asked it to analyse all of the data again, assuming the driver is deeply snowed in and trying to reverse out of a driveway where the snow is freshly fallen. Again, ChatGPT agrees that it is most likely the driver is stuck in the snow and trying to rock free. Again, I ask it to zoom in on the specific moment the Trooper Paul indicated was this sudden steering wheel change indicating impact with a pedestrian, to which it replied, this sequence strongly suggests the vehicle was stuck in deep snow with the driver attempting to rock out using bursts of throttle. The sudden traction regain aligns with the vehicle finally breaking free. Okay, so we're going to have to take a different path here to make sure the AI is considering other potential events, like a pedestrian impact at any stage. To which ChatGPT replies, the data does not strongly indicate a pedestrian impact occurred. It says the observed G-force spikes align more with traction regain events typical of a vehicle stuck in snow, rather than sudden deceleration from an external collision. So at this point, I'm satisfied that ChatGPT has taken into account both scenarios, the one that Trooper Paul suggested and the one that viewers have suggested, relating to the tow truck driver reversing the SUV out of Karen's parents' driveway. So the last thing that I want to know is if the data range between 660.8 and 662.8 could be consistent with driving the vehicle forwards and upwards onto a flatbed tow truck and coming to a sudden stop once it's fully on board. It considers the possibility that the driver might have to reposition the vehicle on a flatbed tow truck after an initial stop, possibly facing traction issues, shock barriers, or misalignment. In this phase-by-phase analysis, it assumes the first phase likely represents the vehicle rolling to a stop against a physical barrier with an attempted adjustment just before stopping. The G-force spike without brake pressure suggests a sudden external stop like hitting a chock. It then notes a slight sudden acceleration attempt, noting that could indicate the vehicle lurched forward suddenly, potentially due to overcoming initial resistance, i.e. sliding off an icy patch or clearing a barrier. A loss of traction followed by sudden grip, common on metal ramps or icy flatbeds. It then notes the final last aggressive forward surge, which is the very last column of the data, which it interprets as the vehicle may have either slipped uncontrollably due to traction loss, possibly sliding forward on an icy or slick metal surface, and the driver may have intentionally accelerated hard, perhaps trying to correct position or overcome resistance. In conclusion, it suggests the data strongly supports the scenario of a vehicle driving onto a flatbed tow truck, stopping abruptly and then making multiple aggressive repositioning attempts, likely experiencing traction issues or hitting obstacles like chocks, possibly slipping forward uncontrollably during the final surge. So there you have it. ChatGPT suggests the data that Trooper Paul provided matches being stuck in the snow, getting free, and loading it up onto a flatbed truck. It does not reflect a vehicle pedestrian strike. And the number of G's shown throughout Trooper Paul's data is not enough to kill a healthy adult. Now, if you want to hear Notepad LM discuss this whole exercise and all of this data in layman's terms, keep your eyes peeled for the next video. I've already produced the podcast, so it won't be far behind this one. And then shortly after that one, we should have a LawTube mashup to wrap up our weekend. Until next time, toodaloo!